Perfect. David, how we doing?
We're doing great. How are we doing?
Oh, I am doing excellent. Excellent. Thank you, sir, for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. You kidding me? Thank you for asking. I'm tickled pink.
Love it. So, David, for those out there who are not aware, the founder of Highwest Whiskey Distillery, best whiskey in the world, in my opinion. It's absolutely my favorite. Actually, we're sharing in on a little whiskey right now.
Wow, that's
Cheers.
a good accolade right there.
Yeah, well, it's my opinion.
We'll take that. I mean, there's a lot of good whiskey out there, though, so I want you to spread the love, all right?
I love Highwest. What can I say? So let's go back just kind of a little bit, kind of going into where Highwest kind of comes from. You know, I mean, you have your degree, you get it in biochemistry. You spent some time at a bunch of those pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer, Amgen, Genentech, and it's kind of a wedding to blame, right?
Wow, I guess you could put it that way. It was a wedding to blame. Yeah, my cousin got married in Cincinnati, which, as you know, is right next to Kentucky. And when you're next to Kentucky, we decided to take a trip from Cincinnati and visit a distillery. And back then, people didn't really visit the distilleries that much.
Right.
Tours and stuff like that, but it was kind of not as it wasn't the thing that it was today. Turns out drinking in the United States hit an all-time low in 1998.
Really?
That wasn't that long ago.
No.
Capita consumption of alcohol was all-time low in 1998. The wedding was 2001. So 3 years later, you know, the alcohol was in the dumps.
Huh. I didn't realize that.
We were there. We thought, why not? We liked wine. We were living in Palo Alto at the time. You know, we thought, why not whiskey? So we went to Maker's Mark, middle of nowhere. I mean, you get lost going there, seriously. But beautiful place, cool place. But it was kind of a folksy, you know, it wasn't really up to your standards, I think, for a tour. Not up to the Highwest standards. And, you know, we just thought, gosh, you can do a lot better. And that's kind of where it started. And that night we were talking, gosh, you know, let's make whiskey. Mainly because it was basically the same business as what I had been doing, which is biotech.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what was kind of, where did that drive come from?
Drive to start my own business?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I always wanted to do my own thing. You know, it wasn't a question of whether, it was a question of when. And, you know, I knew I had to cut my teeth in big companies because big companies do a lot of things really well and they do things smart and they train you. And, you know, I had excellent companies I worked for with great training and smart people. And I was able to step through lots of different functions, from market research to sales to forecasting to product development.
Right.
And, you know, I sort of checked a bunch of boxes, and I was ready, and I knew I was ready when I checked all those boxes.
Sounds like it.
The idea. I didn't know what the idea would be.
Right. It sounds like it made you pretty well-rounded, though, being able to go through kind of.
I mean, it sure helped you learn about, you know, I'm not a finance guy, but there's probably the one box I didn't check. And so that was the weakest part on my resume, was knowing anything about finance. But then starting up, well, you learn finance fast because it's all money's the language of business, and you got to learn, you know, what's a P&L, what's a balance sheet, what's cash flow. And that was my last box, checking that actually in the startup. So
right. So where did that kind of growth come from after that wedding, kind of after you get that tour of Maker's Mark and you're like, hey, I think I would like to cut my teeth in this?
Well, we hadn't moved to Utah yet, but we were planning on moving out west, and, you know, going to the distillery and tasting whiskey and thinking, you know, gosh, we could do this. And then that night we were watching High Plains Drifter.
The classic.
And then that was the light bulb right there. Well, a Western whiskey. Are there any Western whiskeys? There weren't any Western whiskeys at the time. And we thought how obvious that was. I mean, it's not like we're doing a rum in the West or something like that. It'd be a whiskey in the West. And it was so obvious. And we thought, why isn't anybody else doing it? So that was kind of it just made sense. Cowboys drank. We were moving to Park City. Miners drank. There were a lot of saloons.
Yep.
So why wouldn't we do that? We thought it was just stupid not to do it.
Right. And what went into the move from Palo Alto to Park City?
Oh, it wasn't that hard, to be honest. We really didn't look back. We had one daughter, and my wife was pregnant at the time. And Palo Alto, the Bay Area, is just so crowded.
Yeah.
And you'd have to wait 3 months to get in to see your doctor. It's like, no, I got to see you now. And, you'd have to spend the night to get your kid in the school where we were. And we thought, there's just a better way than this. So there must be. So we thought, let's move to Utah, the 50th per capita consumer of alcohol in the United States. And let's see if we can't get this thing started. But luckily, Greg Scherf was here.
That's true. Yeah. No, it's a good
Greg Scherf was here. And so, we thought, well, we weren't that stupid moving to a low alcohol consuming place. It was moving to Park City and starting it there. So.
Yeah. No, it really is a gorgeous place. And it's crazy to think of Palo Alto now. You talk about moving back then and it being overcrowded. But
it got crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a house that we bought for, I don't know, $600,000. That was all the money in the world to me then. And, we didn't think it could ever go up anymore. Right? Who knows? It's worth $2 million now or something. Who needs that crap, right?
Exactly. You get the nice, easy living out here in Park City.
Way easier living out here. That's right.
Once you kind of come out to Park City, what are some of those next steps?
Well, first step was try to find somebody to talk me out of it. So I met Greg Scherf. Greg's a big cheerleader. Greg was a great cheerleader. He's like, why wouldn't you do it? And so he was the guy that said, look, let's go to City Hall.
Mm-hmm.
They have open mic nights. I don't know, it was Monday nights or something. You go in and there's all the locals talking about stuff. Well, there's, somebody's dog pooping in my backyard and all that kind of stuff. And then Greg gets up and says, well, this guy wants to start a whiskey distillery, and I think you ought to sell him the building down at the bottom of Main Street, that old garage. Dave, why don't you get up and tell him about it? I'm like, what, me? So I told him about it, and that's kind of where it started. So,
that's
that
awesome.
was Greg. He introduced me, and he said, there's no way you can't do any other building but that. And, let's make sure City Hall understands it. And at that time, other people were interested in building and stuff. So they put it out for a competition, a bid, and whoever had kind of the best idea and the money, and we won. So that was a good thing.
How tough was it kind of at that time? Because it's kind of hard to imagine thinking back to that time period compared to now, because now you look around and in Utah alone, distilleries are popping up left and right. Yeah. So, how it's not as unique of an idea today as it must have been back then, especially there hadn't been one in Utah since like 1870 or 1876
or 73, somewhere around then. There were illegal ones, but nothing legal.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wanted a brewery or distillery in their backyard downtown. Mm-hmm. They thought we were going to explode and create fires and stink and all that stuff. So, there was a lot of people concerned and didn't like the idea. But we were able to check the boxes and convince them otherwise using experts and just, plain old communication. That's really kind of straightforward. If you meet people and explain things to people, most people are pretty rational. They're just afraid of the unknown. So, right. But, since no one had ever done it, you're afraid of the unknown, and it is flammable stuff that you're making.
Sure.
So the building department, the fire department, and you had a lot of masters you had to meet and address their issues. And, not only that, then there was an ABC, which, they never granted a license before. So we weren't sure. We thought maybe the Mormon thing, Mormons wouldn't like it. So
yeah.
If you read the book, Under the Banner of Heaven.
Under the John Krakauer.
John Krakauer. I read that before we moved here, and I thought, oh my God, people are going to firebomb this place. Turns out that didn't happen. But, we had a lot of hurdles to overcome, and it wasn't completely obvious. It seems like a no-brainer now, but at the time, we felt like we're, running into brick walls.
Yeah. Now, one of those things kind of going back towards that start that I'll always get asked a lot is the name. Where does that Highwest kind of name come from, and what were some of those names you were fighting with?
First of all, nice hat, by the way.
I got to represent.
It's a good hat. The name, it wasn't the name at first. The name at first for me was a very spiritual name, Quaking Aspen.
Quaking Aspen.
I grew up in Colorado, and we spent our weekends in the mountains. And I love aspen trees, and when they quake, there's something inside you that likes that.
Yeah.
So But it turned out to be a problem because people couldn't spell it. They couldn't say it. I had people in Salt Lake say quacking aspen. I'm like, by God, it's your state tree. You know, actually the Colorado blue spruce was the state tree until the Utah legislature changed it to the quaking aspen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we have one of the largest groves in the world. But anyway, quaking aspen was a bad idea. It meant something to me, but to no one else, and that's bad marketing.
Right.
So, you know, we kind of went back to the movie that started it all, High Plains Drifter. And we thought, well, we're not in the deep south. We're not in the far west. We're not in the high desert. We're in the high west. And, you know, it just kind of came to us from there.
So how long did that kind of take to come up with that? You know, was it just a simple watching that movie like, oh yeah, we're not in the
well, I mean, we watched the movie when we got the idea for the company, not the name.
Not the name.
But then later on, I think it came to us in about 3 days. You know,
3 days. Okay.
We can't call it quaking aspen. If one more person says quacking aspen, I'm going to pull my hair out. So it's not a quacking aspen, all right?
Definitely not. No, I think most people are probably pretty excited with the name. Now, I mean, another one of those great things about Highwest and the story is in my opinion, it's such a perfect bottle. And I've traveling all over the world. I mean, I was coaching a camp. This was probably like 2 or 3 years ago. I was in Australia. I was in a place called Thredbo. And we were at a bar, and I'm looking at Thredbo, you know, I'm looking through, and there is this Highwest bottle just
that's awesome.
Bar, and I was like, come on, you got to be kidding me, right? And so down in Australia,
whiskey.
Yes, they do. So down in Thredbo, I was drinking top shelf Highwest there. It was awesome, but it was quite the sight. I was like, wow, it's nice to see it truly is global and continuing to kind of grow. So where did that kind of that idea for the bottle come from?
Well, you know, I'm going to take it back to High Plains Drifter, even though it doesn't go back to High Plains Drifter. But I swear to God, in some Clint Eastwood movie, he has a bottle, he grabs it, and he pulls the cork out with his teeth. You've seen that, right? Mm-hmm. Well, to this day, I can't find that scene. It's not in any movie. You just imagine it in your head. Anyway, point being, we wanted something that would look like what Clint Eastwood would take and grab with his teeth. And we wanted something that looked Western and rustic. Well, it turns out there really weren't any bottles that looked like the Highwest bottles exactly. They looked very different. They're beautiful.
Right.
So we collected them all and looked at them all. The bottle was actually a copy of a bottle that there's a tequila that was sold in this bottle. And my friend gave me a gift of it once, and I always kept the bottle. And I said, you know, this is the one. Even though it doesn't really look like any old Western bottle, it looks like an old Western bottle. So we liked it. I wanted to have the tallest bottle on the shelf. And so we were looking for a tall bottle rather than a squat bottle. Mm-hmm. But the tallest bottle on the shelf just shorter than Grey Goose. So at the time, the tallest bottle on the shelf was Grey Goose. They came out, they were taller than anything, and it was so prolific, the product, you had to carry it because everybody wanted it. Yeah. Bars had to move their shelves up to accommodate the Grey Goose bottle. Huh. So I thought, well, I don't want them moving up for us because we don't have as much money as them. So let's be slightly shorter than them, but they can still put our bottle in. So we designed it to be just shorter than the Grey Goose bottle, but tall enough to stand out for, on the shelf. And we designed the label. If you see, well, you've got the bottle. I don't have the bottle. Somebody said, well, you better make it so they can read your name from across the bar. So look at the name. Yep.
That's nice and big.
Rather than this tiny little font where you can't see, like that. You can't see that. But we wanted a bottle. So my wife and I went to Mexico to tequila country, where they make the bottles for all the tequilas. And all the tequilas have great, cool bottles. And so there's plenty of guys that handcraft bottles down there. We ended up meeting a guy named Jorge. Mm-hmm. And he was outside of Guadalajara.
Okay.
And Tlaquepaque.
Okay.
And they make all these bottles by hand. And I mean, they don't make them by hand anymore. We shifted companies, but he was the guy, and they had seeds in it, looked hand blown, and it got to the point where we wanted him to make the bottle look. So if you see that bottom there, how thick that is.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so they made it thin. I said, "Can you thicken it up?" And he said, "Well, yeah, sure, we can do it." So they change it, and they do it by hand, and they made it really thick. And I said, well, can you make them look uneven? And he looks at me like, what? No. And so they would take the molten glass and kind of bang it on the table before they put it in the mold, and it would make it, you can kind of see there's a little unevenness there.
Right. Yeah, of course.
It was deliberate to make it uneven looking. Let's see if this one, yeah, this one's kind of got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was deliberate to make it uneven to make them look handmade. So anyway, we wanted that handmade looking. It's a special bottle, so right?
It's extremely special, yeah. Now, where does that meticulousness kind of come from? Because it seems a lot of you want the height of that bottle to be just a little bit shorter than Grey Goose. You want it to have that certain, and it seems like in all aspects of the business, there's definitely some meticulousness there. So where would you say that comes from?
Well, I think, kudos to you for pointing that out. I'm anal retentive to the nth degree. I mean, look, the customer cares, the customer gets it. Not all customers are going to see all the details, but, from most of the customers see most of the details. Some of the customers see all the details. Mm-hmm. And, the details matter. And your consumer, your brand is everything. And the consumer, everything needs to line up.
Right.
So, from the building in downtown Park City that had its flaws. Yeah. But they were perfect flaws. But the handmade, the barn wood, and we kept all the wood in the livery. Everything just had to make sense. But, a bottle, if it's going to represent a brand that represents the Old West, it's got to have that kind of errors in it or mistakes in it, which has a beauty to it. Rather than a perfect Grey Goose bottle, which, doesn't really represent the brand. We kind of celebrate the imperfections of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think, would you say part of that kind of meticulousness has helped in your success? I mean, that attention to detail, because I would say there's a lot of people that brush those things aside and kind of just look over like, all right, I did the daily thing that I was supposed to do. This was the task. I completed it to maybe not the best or fullest potential, but at least it's done. Kind of brushing over some of that attention to detail.
Yeah, I mean, there's two kinds of people in life. On another framework, those that say how we doing, and those that say how you doing. But there's another two kinds of people in life. Satisficers and maximizers. For me, anything that's worth doing is worth overdoing. Mm-hmm. Put your gusto into it and A+ it. Because if you're not A+ in it, what are you doing in life? So, I mean, for me, I wasn't naturally great at much. I'm not the smartest guy in the class, but I've worked extra hard. To work extra hard, you're meticulous about stuff. You go over things again and again. You do your homework. But for me, I appreciate the details. But I felt the customer would care about that. And if you didn't care about that, you probably weren't our customer. But if you did notice it, you were our customer. And I think that, it would say something about what's inside, that somebody was a perfectionist about the liquid that you're about to put in your body. And if you're going to spend $40 or more for a bottle of booze when you can buy something for 15, the details ought to be there. If they're not, it's probably not worth $40.
Sure.
$50 or $60 or whatever the price you're charging.
Yep.
So I don't think we charge the highest prices, but, I think our product was worth the price because of the attention to the detail.
Yeah. And you certainly put the time in for it. I mean, how much would you say that perseverance in kind of going through that research and development and then having to go through getting the building and the distilling and all that kind of played a role for you?
Well, it sure wasn't an overnight success. And, early on, it wasn't obvious we were going to get there. And there were plenty of times when we thought we weren't going to get there. So, the meticulousness and the homework, at the end of the day paid off, but you just had to believe it was going to matter. But it certainly didn't seem like it mattered in the early days.
In the early days. Was it, I mean, how much fun has that journey been? Because a lot of the different people, I've talked to, they talk about the fun part of that process, creating that every day, being able to maximize and come up with the uniqueness of going to Mexico and dealing with tequila bottles to figure out the exact way that you want it to look. I mean, how much of a joy was that for you?
It was joy. Every step was fun, even though it was hard. Mm-hmm. But what we had was a really complicated multi-dimensional system, if you will. The brand of Highwest. But the brand was the liquid in the bottle. The brand was the bottle itself and the details around the label and the height, the way the glass was. The brand was the facility that we built. The brand was the people that got hired, and we had this culture that felt great. But the brand and the satisfaction was getting all that done in a way where it all lined up, and then it was banging on all 8 cylinders, and it was excellent. So that was fun. And I don't regret a single bit of it. It was so much fun. Really, even, at the end of the day, just interacting with the people and being with the people who appreciated it as well. Because if they didn't and weren't as passionate about it, it would have been a lot less fun. But everybody cared, and that was the fun part. So, I think we had a lot of A-plussers, and, it was a pleasure being around people that cared and maximized.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. So how does it continue to move from there? Let's talk a little bit about going into making of the juice. We have the quacking. We've moved on from that. We're done with quacking Aspen. We've settled on Highwest. We have our bottles, and now we're working on some of that whiskey.
Well, of course, that was the fun part, because I think we started the business to make whiskey, and I like to cook. I was never a chef at a restaurant. Well, I flipped burgers at a restaurant.
That's a cook. That counts.
Yeah, that's a cook. But I like to cook. I like to cook at home. Having my background in chemistry, and especially biochemistry, and making bread and using yeast, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed tweaking the parameters on it to improve the product. And doing whiskey was kind of the ultimate thing for me, because coming from biotech, you made drugs, but you didn't really sip those or taste those or enjoy them.
Yeah.
They served a purpose, and that was fun.
Sure.
And that was fulfilling. But more fulfilling was to make something and taste it and know that it was good. And then even better, knowing that other people thought it was good. So,
do you remember the first whiskey that you ever made and tried, gave it a taste?
Well, there's 2 answers to that, yes and yes. One is what we made, and another one is while we were making and while we understood that making good whiskey is really hard to do, we bought some whiskeys from other distilleries and sourced them. And, it's obvious today. Everybody knows about today. But back then, it wasn't an obvious thing. And nobody knew about that. It was kind of a no-no, even though other people did it, but nobody knew about it. People lied and didn't tell the truth. I met a guy, my mentor, Jim Rutledge, who ran Four Roses. And he was the one that said, gosh, while you're waiting for your whiskey to get good, while you're waiting for it to age, how are you going to make money and pay the bills? And I said, well, good question. He said, well, buy some whiskey and sell it as your own while you're waiting. And I thought, well, I don't really want to do that. I want to make it. And he said, how are you going to pay the bills? So good point. And he helped us. He said, if I were you, I would sell the rye whiskey Seagram's makes. They put it in a Seagram 7. No one's ever had it. It's the best rye whiskey in the world. And it turns out there was a batch of it sitting in Australia, of all places.
Really?
Foster's was going to launch a bourbon and a rye in Australia. They changed their minds. The whiskey was sitting there. And at the time Jim told me this, I met the guys at the Seagram's facility. They could put me in touch with the guys at Foster's who had the stuff they wanted to get rid of. We bought that rye whiskey and they shipped it back over the ocean to Highwest. So your Australian story is kind of funny to think, well, our whiskey started life in Australia where you in a bottle. We shipped it and we ended up blending that rye with the older rye that I'm drinking now, the 16-year. And, it was amazing. And there were really no whiskeys that we knew of where they blended a young and an old. And so that was our creation. And one of the things we added to the business was, let's create a different product no one's ever had that's unique, that we could sell and talk about it as our own, even though we didn't make the base products. And so, that was really our first whiskey that we sold. That was called Rendezvous.
Rendezvous, yeah.
So, but the whiskey we were making in our own still, it took us a while to perfect the recipe. And, we made a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's much better now, but, better now because we learned from a lot of the best in the industry, helping us with the protocol and stuff. So.
How influential was Jim?
Oh, first of all, I'm a big fan of his whiskeys. the Four Roses whiskeys, if you don't have any, rush out and get them. They're elegant. They're beautiful. I think they're the most elegant whiskeys because for him, it's what you put into the wood, garbage in, garbage out. If you put great stuff into the wood. So if you taste their White Dog, which you can buy other people's White Dog. Most White Dog's horrible. Raw whiskey. Four Roses White Dog is elegant, beautiful. I mean, you could sip it on its own. It's very, very pretty. And so, he was a big factor. We want to make pretty whiskeys.
Right.
So.
How did you get in touch with him?
Not just shoving it out the door, just good. Good. So, yeah.
How did you find your way to Jim?
I cold called him at the suggestion of a friend of mine that I'd met. It was a lady in the whiskey business, Rhiannon Walsh, and she had a couple of big whiskey shows. And she said, I think she gave me his email, and she told him to, expect my call. And I cold called him, and he was so friendly. He said, come out to Kentucky and let's spend some time together. So I did. He was very gracious with his time, and why should he spend any time with me? There weren't a lot of people asking him. There's a lot of people now.
Right.
But he was very gracious. He thought the idea of a Western whiskey was cool. We he was a perfectionist.
Right.
And he came to Park City and helped us with our first set of batches. And great guy. So, in fact, one of our yeasts came from Four Roses. They had 5 different yeasts, and he impressed upon me the impact that yeast has on your whiskey. What a perfectionist you need to be in the process to have a good product and a consistent product. So, that perfectionism translated over to what we do.
Right. It works right your way into being meticulous, right?
Well, making good anything's about being meticulous for the most part.
Now, I'm curious, where does that love of whiskey come from? Have you always been a big whiskey lover? Because
it's a fair question. I always liked it. I went to school in Virginia, and the drink of choice in Virginia was whiskey. There was a distillery there called Virginia Gentleman, and everybody drank. That's what you took to football games. And you put a big bottle in your pocket and bring it in. So everybody drank Virginia Gentleman. It was a bourbon. So I wouldn't say I was a connoisseur or anything like that, but I liked the taste. I liked that kind of caramel vanilla flavor. So I always had a bottle in my cabinet.
Okay.
And I think when I went to Maker's Mark on that tour and tasted it then from the still, that's where the light bulb went off. I thought, my God, this is really good. I was always a foodie. I liked beer. I liked wine. Yeah. But I wouldn't say I was a great taster or anything like that.
Yeah. No,
but when you're making it, it's a lot. When you're cooking in the kitchen, the food's, it's a lot more fun when you're doing the work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's one of those things that, as I spent my time at Highwest, it's one of the, I've learned so much about it. Like, I always enjoyed whiskey, but it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know if my taste buds are quite there yet.
Yeah.
Once you start to understand the amount of work and things that go into it, and you first start to be like, oh, like you get some of those tasting notes and the nose, and you start to figure out like it's really, it's so rewarding when you're able to kind of create your own style and your own flavors that you really enjoy. And it's easy to see how it's exploding right now. It's really expanding, and the whiskey world is really growing so much bigger, right?
Oh, it's super cool. It's the ultimate slow food, but it's it's a complex product, and as a consumer, it's rewarding to learn about it. And you can taste the differences, and you've experienced that. And I think I did the same thing. I experienced that, and I thought, gosh, if we could learn about tweaking it, how much fun does it get when you're doing that on your own? And, then what we learned was education led to appreciation. So the more you could teach people about that, the more they would like your product or bourbon or whiskey in general. But you had to teach people about that. And I think that was one of the most pleasurable things in the business, was having the light bulb going off in other people's heads and them learning to appreciate, wow, what is good whiskey and what's not good whiskey.
Yep. No, it's always fun to interact with some of those people that, it's easy to see when they always tell you, I'm not a whiskey drinker. And it's like, oh,
that's right.
That's fine. Like, here you go. We're going to try some of these things. These will be some of the tasting notes. If you get a little hint of this or a little hint of that, and they're like, oh, I did get that.
That's right.
Oh, my light, that little light bulb moment. It's always fun to be a part of.
So you've gotten to do that in your job.
Yeah, of course, I've
Are you
gotten
giving the
it.
tours at the refectory?
No. That is reserved for Bucket Greg and Sterling. But when we have other tastings
Oh,
going
well,
on
but
at some
every
tables,
table's a customer, you
of
know.
course,
It's an
absolutely,
opportunity.
yeah, absolutely. So it's always a fun thing to interact with them on for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good. Well, you're the right person they should hire then if you like that. So
I do enjoy it so far. That's for sure. Now let's talk about a little bit more of kind of that expansion. You have Rendezvous Rye, which is the first product that kind of comes off the line, and what's that reception to the public, and what is the expectations for you, because you are so meticulous and you are attention to detail, and now your product is out there for people to try.
well, fair question. I mean, you know, on the one hand, I knew I liked it, but I didn't know that other people like it.
Right.
So you're kind of running an experiment. And just because you like something doesn't mean anybody else is going to like it. So, you know, but I thought, oh my God, this is unbelievable. It's got this clove, the cinnamon, allspice. You know, there's nothing out there like it. And, you know, little did we know the Whiskey Advocate magazine, it was Malt Advocates, Whiskey Advocate now, they got a hold of a bottle. We didn't send it to them. And, you know, we get this note that we got a 95-point rating. And, you know, I thought, oh, wow, that's cool. Well, 95 points, they don't dole that out like to everybody. And so that's a big deal. And so, you know, we took all their top rated whiskeys and we put them on. Our first sales piece was, you know, we put the price and the points. And we were the cheapest price with the highest points. And so, you know, sales kind of started going up. And I thought, oh, this is pretty good. So we got a little notoriety because it was a good whiskey. It had a good rating at a great price.
Yeah.
You know, it was pleasing to kind of see that, which was good because, you know, we had a lot of bills to pay and, you know, we were losing money then. So it was kind of nice to be able to have a product that actually worked.
Right. I mean, it's got to be really rewarding for you through that whole process of creating the product and building everything up to get at least just a little note, you know, 95 point. I mean, Whiskey Advocate, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, you know, rewarding mainly to, you know, we were spending money on this company, you know, you were spending X and you were making, you know, 1/10 of X. And at some point we got to cover the X. And,
right.
Well, it took us 3 or 4 years to break even. And, you know, that was a tough time. And that's, we launched Rendezvous Christmas of 2007. And then, you know, Bear Stearns and, you know, the financial market took a dive right about a month later.
Yeah.
You know, so the economy was in the shitter and, you know, boy, we didn't know we'd make it.
Right.
Yeah, that was a tough time. At least we had a good product. So, you
know. So you have that good product and you have that perseverance to kind of continue. I mean, how long can you innovate and keep that product growing?
Well, I mean, you had the one product, Rendezvous, and then it's like, well, we need to make more money. What are we going to do? So we came out with a vodka. We launched those old 16-year-olds and we had a 21-year-old. And, you know, people didn't buy old whiskey like that back then. You know, Pappy, you could go into a local Utah liquor store and buy a bottle of Pappy for, you know, it'd sit on the shelf for months. Nobody would buy it. So you couldn't give that stuff away back then. So, you know, it was a slow, steady build. And, you know, it was about perseverance. It was about having enough money in the bank. And, we did a lot of planning, cash flow planning. That wasn't my forte, but, you know, after doing that, it is my forte now. You know, you got to put in a spreadsheet and measure every dollar and nickel and dime and, you know, pray to God. Money comes in and you're not spending too much. So you got a lot of balls in there.
Right. No, absolutely. A lot of moving parts. Now part of that, I mean, especially during that time period, you know, in that recession, what are some of those kind of failures or some of those hiccups along the way? Because towards success, I would say in everyone's career, you always go through some of those failures or those learning moments that really help you kind of grow to newer and better heights that allow you to kind of come back.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, failures or trials. I mean, we certainly had our trials. You know, you could say the initial name was a failure. You know, the point for us, we've made a lot of mistakes and had a lot of, you know, things that failed. And correct quickly. Make mistakes, correct quickly was kind of what we had to do. And
Correct quickly.
had to pivot quick.
Mm-hmm.
So it was about being on your toes and being ready to move.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I found out the name didn't work, you change it.
Right.
But, we came out with vodka. We thought, gosh, we could sell a whole lot of vodka because you look at Grey Goose. And we didn't sell a lot of vodka. It wasn't a big seller,
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't count on that. So we came out with a lot of different products. And it's kind of like throwing spaghetti against the wall. We would just come out with different things and see what would stick. So we ran a lot of experiments. And experiments are really made to, pass or fail. And if you fail, move, go quickly to something else. And it's okay to fail. And we failed a lot.
Mm-hmm. So you would say definitely like adjusting with speed, being able to kind of pivot off one thing, not hold on to it for longer than it needs to.
Well,
be held on.
It seems like we were able to do that. So some things we probably held on to too long. We sold some unaged whiskeys. We had the Silver Oat and the Silver Rye.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody wanted to buy that stuff, so that was kind of a failure, if you will. But we had to try it. You didn't know that people wouldn't buy it, so try it, run the experiment, take the shot on goal. Either you make it or you don't.
Right. And so, kind of when does Double Rye, American Prairie Bourbon, Campfire? I mean, Campfire is one of my favorites. I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And it's so unique to so many different people. It's always one of those where someone will try it and they're like, I'm not a big fan, or they cannot stop drinking it.
That's true. I mean, it's binary. I mean, even when we were making it at the time, not all of us that were making it liked it. But it sort of, for me, it filled a special void. And Jane, my wife, came up with the name early on. Said we got to call our whiskey Campfire. And I was thinking, well, we got to have the right whiskey if we're going to call it Campfire. But it was a great name, and we can't believe nobody had that name before, right? I mean,
it's fantastic.
Obvious name for a whiskey. But we had it, maybe 4 years before we came out with the product.
Okay.
But the start, we were in Scotland and we were tasting the peaty malts, and it was a dessert that we had where they had taken a bottle of peated malt and boiled it down, put sugar in it, so they made a peated syrup.
Mm-hmm.
And they served it on some ripe honeydew, and it was so delicious. And,
wow.
Different. I'd never had a dessert like that. And we had just been offered to buy some bourbon. We weren't going to do a bourbon.
Okay.
Well, we started with the idea of bourbon, then we went to rye, and we thought, we don't need to do a bourbon. Everybody's got bourbon. Why do we need to do a bourbon? But the place that makes the whiskey, MGP, which was LDI, which was Seagram's, was owned by Pernod Ricard. They bought Absolute for $1 gazillion. They were way in debt. They had to pay it off. So they were selling off their whiskey stocks.
Okay.
And they sent us some of this whiskey, and it was bourbon, 6, 7 years old. And I mean, the price would be probably 1/10 of what you pay today.
Okay.
But back then it was a lot of money to us, but we tasted, oh my God, it was so good. Some of it was Four Roses, and we bought it all. And we were in Scotland, and we tasted this fruit with the smoke on it, and we thought, well, why don't we mix a peated malt with some bourbon, which is really fruity, which came from the MGP, and that's where the idea came from. So
I want to try some of that dessert.
Run, don't walk, run, get some ripe honeydew, take a bottle of peated scotch, reduce it, put sugar in it. Make a smoky, simple syrup. So good. But Campfire kind of reminded us of that. So you can have smoke with the sweetness of the bourbon. And if you get a fruity bourbon, which is what the Seagram's bourbon is, very fruity, delicious. Yeah. So the Campfire just worked. So it was good. Good product. But it took us, probably took us a year, 80 different recipes. We made a lot of failures in that and tasted off.
But it's great now.
Right, good stuff now. So, but the ratios of the smoke to the bourbon, you could tweak it a little bit and it would just go off. It was amazing what a small change would make in the flavor of the product.
Right.
So we learned a lot. And
is that same kind of learning go into Double Rye as well?
Yeah, I think Double Rye, because again, we had, 3 products. We had the Rendezvous, we had the vodka, we had the older whiskeys. And it's like, gosh, if we only had another. So you go into the liquor store and Jack Daniels would have, 10 bottles across the shelf.
Yeah.
Same product. And then they would put one of our bottles up here and one down here and one over here. And it's like, well, how come Jack gets, all their bottles here? You kind of maybe see Highwest. And we knew that if we could get more across the shelf, maybe they might see Highwest and buy Highwest. So it's like we come out with other products and maybe extend our billboard. Mm-hmm. And also could we come out with something less expensive? Because Rendezvous had a 6-year-old in it, and that was expensive.
Yeah.
So we were buying the new make from Seagram's, LDI, MGP, and the young rye was delicious, but it was hot. Mm-hmm. So we did an experiment. We blended it with the 16-year-old, and bam, it was amazing. Double rye was such a good product, especially in the early years, because the way they made the whiskey was a little different than now.
Okay.
And they would buy rye from Europe, German and Swedish rye. And that rye, the way they cared for that rye was so different. And the whiskey it made had more cloves in it. And so you taste this young rye whiskey. It was so good, completely different than Rendezvous, but it was the same thing that would age to Rendezvous. So instead of kind of clove and allspice and nutmeg, it was more cinnamon, kind of red hot cinnamons.
Yeah.
The young double rye was so good. And one guy gave us a 100-pointer on it. It was so good. And it was a lower price point. That kind of became our main go-to.
Yeah. No, for the price point too. I mean, it is such a fantastic whiskey.
Great whiskey for the price point. Yeah.
It should always be in everyone's household.
It should always be in everyone's household. So the taste is a little different now. I think the ratios of the products have changed, and where they're sourcing rye is a little different. So it doesn't have that quite same cinnamon intensity, but yeah, still pretty good. But that cinnamon intensity was really was special.
Right. And kind of going off of that cinnamon, what are some of your favorite notes when you're going in a whiskey for you personally? What is it that you look for and really enjoy when you're going in to try a whiskey?
Well, fair question. I think, people can pick out 1,000 flavors in any whiskey bottle, but, you got to keep it simple for the customer. Mm-hmm. And, if you can have a predominant thing in a whiskey where people can pick that up and say, oh, yeah. So double rye for me was cinnamon. Mm-hmm. Rendezvous had Christmas. So it had all spices, malting spices. So keep it simple. Rendezvous had malting spices. That made it a winner. You get these candied fruits in the older whiskeys. So, if you could find a predominant flavor that is something everybody loves. Who doesn't love malting spices? Who doesn't love cinnamon? Who doesn't love candied fruit? So, I love all those distinctive flavors in different whiskeys. And, and there's balance. And if you can have the balance of the oak to the predominant flavor, that's a good thing. So you want your whiskey balanced.
How hard is it when you're going through to find that balance?
It's a lot harder than you think.
It sounds pretty hard.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's whiskey's a function of the barrels, and every barrel's different. So, at the end of the day, each batch is a blend of different barrels. And they're not always going to taste the same. Mm-hmm. So we would have, a lot of barrels from a particular season that had a particular flavor profile. You'd want to kind of bleed that out to carry that flavor profile into the next batch and the next batch. So we would have tremendous inconsistencies season to season, and to get that cinnamon flavor, it was a big deal and hard to do.
Right. Sounds like it'd be extremely difficult to.
Well, when you're getting more and more, and you're selling more, and managing that inventory is probably the hardest thing you did, I think. And so we would taste it a lot and taste different batches and say, wow, we can't run that batch down. We got to spread that out to keep that flavor profile. That was the fun part of the job, but also the challenging part of the job.
Right. Now, where does that, you talk about some of those stales, when do you start to see a little bit of that uptick?
It's kind of hard to exactly say. I mean, it wasn't like this hockey stick thing. I mean, it was just a steady progression, but the good news is it was going up. Mm-hmm. And so you could kind of plan from that and say, well, if it's going up at this rate, here are the dollars that are coming in, and here's what our spend profile needs to be. And we put together a plan in 2006 that we raised some money off of. And it was a 10-year plan. You've got a spreadsheet with 10 columns and numbers.
Right.
And, it turns out the number we predicted in year 10 in 2006 was the number we hit in year 10, that we said in 2006. Now, that was pure luck. We didn't get there the way we thought we would, but, I would just say it was just kind of a nice, consistent, steady. There wasn't a rocket ship, hockey stick kind of a thing.
Right.
But, you knew if you did all the same things consistently and kept putting pressure on, that was the idea. Persistence.
How much is that persistence kind of along that 10-year plan? Because it sounds like a lot of planning going in, figuring out some of those numbers and things of that nature, which kind of, I just said earlier, not like your super strong suit, right? Some of those finances. How difficult was that for you to try and figure that out?
Well, it's super hard. I mean, we had some good guys that were good at spreadsheets and stuff, and but they did a lot of iterations. And I think the hard part was really all the planning and what ifs, because we were dealing with a future that we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes companies will put a forecast together, which is the point forecast, and you plan to that, but the point is you don't know that that's going to happen.
Right.
So we did a lot of what we call scenario planning, where we said, well, what if the forecast is half what you thought? What are you going to do then? How would you spend then? What if it's double what you thought? What would you do then? So it wasn't really what would be, it's what could have been.
Yeah.
And so we planned off of different possibilities because we just didn't know what was going to happen.
Right. That goes back to that meticulousness, planning for all those scenarios.
If we weren't, we wouldn't be alive today. I mean, there wouldn't be a Highwest today.
Yeah.
Shit hit the fan, and we had times when sales were soft and things didn't go our way, or we had to spend more money on something, or a batch of whiskey, somebody mixed the wrong thing and we had to throw it out. And
right.
You had to be prepared and have a contingency plan if shit hit the fan. And so we had a lot of contingency plans.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense when you talk about it that way. Now, let's talk about a couple of those specialty ones that I know a lot of people are big fans of. You have the Dram, which is probably the most popular. It's one of those things every winter. As soon as the Dram, everyone wants the Dram. Where does that
now?
Yeah, where does that? Where did the idea for the Dram come from for you?
Oh, that is so good.
Rubbing it in everyone's face, that Dram.
Rubbing in. This is an old one too, because if you look at the label, we put the old Shakespearean S's in that look like F's. You see that?
Yeah.
So it says blend of Thwaite rye whiskey. Yeah. Anyway, I think they changed that. I don't know, but I don't know why. These were just, again, we had an uncertain future, and you had no idea what was going to sell or how much was going to sell, but we thought, gosh, if we get more products, maybe we'll sell more.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a lot of experiments. And again, we did a lot of experiments that failed, and we did a lot of experiments that didn't fail. This is one of the experiments that we had that didn't fail. So I had our national sales manager at the time who used to make wine. I said, call all your friends in California and ship us every single kind of barrel you can. Zinfandel barrels, Syrah barrels, port barrels, et cetera, Hungarian oak, French oak. And so we put the Rendezvous rye in all these different barrels, and we had 20 of them. And, after a year, we said, well, let's break them out and taste them. And so we had all these 20 glasses lined up in front of us, and, taste them. We call it speed dating. You taste them all. You get a pretty good impression pretty quick. And 2 of them stood out that were like, oh my God, these are amazing. Like a couple of them were just total shit. So if you put Rendezvous rye in a Chardonnay barrel, total shit. It was the worst. What are we going to do with that barrel? I mean, I won't talk about that. But we had one in French oak, and we had one in a port barrel. And at the end of the tasting, I mixed it together and tasted it. It's like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. This tastes like Christmas, because it tastes like a pudding or a fruit cake that you get in a tin for Christmas that people throw away. Well, I love fruit cake. Or like an English pudding where they put creme anglaise and light it on fire.
Right.
It tastes like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's amazing. So we wanted to call it Christmas whiskey. Turns out some guy in Cleveland had trademarked Christmas whiskey. So, we'd gone down, we designed a label. Anyway, I was kind of disappointed, really rejected at that point. So, but my daughter, this was in the summertime, my daughter was reading Midsummer Night's Dream. Mm-hmm. And, I saw the book, name came to me, we couldn't call it Christmas whiskey, bam, Midwinter Night's Dreams. There you go. It was an experiment, awesome. A lot of failures, a couple things were good. The name was wrong again. But, serendipity happens and you pivot. So we had a lot of serendipity. So
yeah,
I'll take serendipity anytime.
That's awesome. Yeah, everyone I know is ready and waiting for the next batch. It's always one of those things. As soon as it sells out, a bunch of people will come in and be like, "I'll give you X amount of dollars. I just need to get my dram. I missed it. They come in for a ski trip and they're one weekend late, and it's come back next year. Sorry, plan your ski trip a little bit earlier."
I mean, we couldn't believe how we just did it as a one-off, and it sold out. We thought, well, gosh, maybe we should do it again. So that's one of those experiments. If it doesn't work, don't do it again. If it does work, do it again. So then we did other things. A couple of the other whiskeys in that batch. One was in Syrah barrels. One was in Vermouth barrels. We mixed those two together. Guess what that became?
Yippee-ki-yay.
Well, first it was Wild West whiskey.
Wild West whiskey. Okay.
Somebody had a name.
Okay.
I was demoralized. What do you do when you're depressed? You watch Bruce Willis or John Wayne. Well, I was watching Bruce Willis. That's where the name came from.
Perfect. So, I mean, kind of during your career here, how important of a role has film played in it? Because it sounds like you're a big movie buff, and I know in some of the locations there's definitely a lot on movies, and speak to that a little bit.
Everybody's a movie buff, I think. I don't know if I'm any more than anybody else, but mm-hmm. I think for me, no one's got a monopoly on wisdom or great ideas. Great ideas come from other sources. And for me, it's the intersection of good ideas that create that newness and something that's fun and innovative. And so, I'm kind of just copying what other people have done. So, yippee-ki-yay, I didn't invent it. Bruce Willis did when he said that at the Christmas party that he blew people's heads off, I guess. Remember that scene?
Of course, yeah.
I didn't come up with, Midsummer Night's Dream, but, Midwinter Night's Dram, I don't know. It's it was a riff off of something somebody else had done. So, it's not so much movies as just other disciplines or other creative people or other works of art. And if you can combine that, so I don't know. I don't have a monopoly on that. I just got lucky, I think.
Sure. But I think part of that, I mean, it seems like you got to have a little bit of open-mindedness towards that. It seems like you're pretty open and you're at least like paying attention to a lot of those things.
Maybe that's the case. Yeah. I mean, I think, you owe it to yourself to have a broad array of inputs, and, movies are an input for most people. Books are inputs for most people. Mm-hmm. If you can expand your thinking and, maybe broaden your perspective on things, movies sure help you do that. And that's one way I enjoy broadening my perspective.
What are some of the books? I'm always looking to expand, I guess, my knowledge. So what are some of the books that you've read that have really helped you along the way?
Oh, probably my favorite would be Atlas Shrugged. I think for me, it's a big, thick tome, but, it's also about entrepreneurism, and it's about perfectionism, and, a guy with a dream that wouldn't quit, that wouldn't give up. And, he made this metal that was better, mm-hmm. And all the forces stacked against him. How the entrepreneur is the most beautiful thing on the planet. And we should really step back and create the systems to let these people go and do their own thing. And, that's what Atlas Shrugged was about for me. It was about, don't quit. If you believe in something, keep going. Don't let the turkeys get you down. Mm-hmm. Fight. And if you know it's worth fighting for, fight. But, I think the big thing out of that book, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And I think I love all Ayn Rand stuff. And But Atlas Shrugged has a lot of great messages in it for people. And that's probably the Bible for me.
Right. When did you first read that?
Well, I had to do a book report on it in college, and I didn't read the thing because it was too thick. So I read so I got the gist of it. So in Cliff Notes, and I think it made it to the screen. I don't know, maybe 2005. And when we sold Highwest, I picked up the book and I said, I'm going to read the whole thing front to back. So it took me a while, but I did. I think the lessons in it for me are, just self-determination and working hard.
Mm-hmm.
If you work hard, good things will come. If
Right.
you're perfectionist, good things will come. If you don't give people a handout, but you make people put their heart and soul into the thing and they're passionate about something, good things will come. So it was a good book for me.
Right. I'm definitely going to pick it up for sure. So
It's a thick one, I'm telling you.
All right. I'll set some time aside. I'll be ready for it. Where are the Cliff Notes?
Do they still sell Cliff Notes? I don't know.
I don't know if they do. Is it just Wikipedia nowadays?
Probably.
Now, 2016 Whiskey Advocate Highwest Distillery of the Year. What does that accolade mean to you personally when that comes out, that gets released? I mean, all that hard work, perseverance. What does that mean when one of those big magazines, labels Highwest as Distillery of the Year?
Well, I mean, for sure. I mean, it's certainly special. We as a team had a goal, a long-term goal. Well, it was a vision. It was a vision. We had our mission at Highwest. It was, we get out of bed in the morning and make great whiskey, to teach people about what makes great whiskey, and to celebrate our home, the West. And so that's what got us out of bed. And the vision was where we're headed. And we had our vision changed over time, but I don't know when we wrote it. Once we hit break even, we said, why shouldn't we be considered one of the best distilleries in the world? And so, that might have been 2010. And so that was a goal of ours as a company. It was a team effort because we had to have the whole, all 8 cylinders had to be banging.
Right.
And, to get that and to be recognized by that, it was really just a satisfying team accomplishment, because we couldn't have done it without everybody rowing in one direction. So yeah, I mean, that was really, really kind of, just hit our hearts, and we were all pretty satisfied after that. That was fun.
Right. And then,
I mean, we couldn't believe it because there's so many other great distilleries, right? But yeah, that was pretty special. I think, the team sure felt it. It was a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean,
ultimate accolade. I mean, yeah, gosh, that was awesome. That was awesome.
Now, then we go into Constellation coming in. And is that the same year, or was that 2017?
Gosh, Bobby, it's been a while. I think it was the same year.
Okay.
I think that was the year that, we had all these companies calling us, and I think that's, I think they started calling us maybe 2015.
Okay.
And Constellation was kind of out of the blue. They were last in the process. But I think when we got the accolade, we were deep in discussions with a bunch of companies.
Right. And where does that kind of to come into play for you, right? Because it is your baby, and you start to do a little bit of that handoff process, right? How is that difficult to kind of go through that, to say, I mean, you had a lot of negotiations and stuff like that, and you are so meticulous and an overachiever and maximizing and making sure you're getting everything right to the last detail. So how hard of a process is that for you?
Well, I mean, it's all the above. It was fun because, here are companies that wanted you.
Mm-hmm.
It was satisfying because we ultimately raised money and had 100 investors. And at the end of the day, it wasn't about me. It was about the promised investors said, you're going to get your money back somehow. Right. Now, we didn't know how that was going to happen, but as luck would have it, we put a 10-year plan together in 2006, and 2016 was when we sold.
Yeah.
how did that happen? That's pure luck. It wasn't, it didn't happen like we thought the plan in 2006, but, it was kind of meeting a promise, and that felt good. But, then you're handing it off, and it's like, well, I kind of liked my job, and I kind of liked, where we were. And, but, it wasn't about me. It was about investors and employees and what was best for them long term. Having a big company take it over. And, it's one of the few places in town where I think people are still collecting a paycheck now.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm glad it's not a small business running anymore, because, it's hard making a paycheck when you're not making that much money.
Sure.
So, it's times like now, it's so gratifying that, there's 200, 300 employees
Mm-hmm.
that, are collecting a paycheck. Oh my God, how gratifying is that?
Yeah.
So, at the time we didn't know that, but, at the time we did know that here would be a great future for a lot of people. It's very meaningful in town. So on the one hand, bittersweet, but on the other hand, so pleasing. That, it's like kicking your child out of the nest from high school, and they're going to Harvard or Yale or whatever. And, hey, what's wrong with your child going to Harvard or Yale?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So looking back on the legacy that is Highwest so far, what are some of the things that are most gratifying to you? Kind of piggybacking on what you were talking about.
200 people in town that have a livelihood that,
Mm-hmm.
matter,
Mm-hmm.
passionate about it, and, they're collecting a paycheck. That's
Right.
pretty gratifying.
Sure.
That's a lot of people in town. People that are passionate about their jobs, love whiskey, and, love talking to people about whiskey. And, whiskey's not the most important thing on the planet, but
Right.
It's certainly a pastime and a passion for people. And if you can change people's lives, make them step out of their day-to-day grind and have them enjoy something a little more, whiskey does that. And to have 200 employees that feel that same way about it as I did, that's pretty gratifying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's still alive. It's still going. People,
of course, absolutely.
Find people that say, I was in Australia and I saw a bottle of Highwest. That's pretty gratifying.
Of course. Yeah. Not only
my favorite whiskey.
Australia, definitely New York City, a bunch of different places. Germany.
Yeah.
Saw it in Germany. Switzerland. I can't remember. I think I saw it in Zurich as well. So it's a few different places on the map rather than just the U.S. And of course it's growing. So
I get pictures from people, in different bars all around the world. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So to have your children out there,
mm-hmm.
But the extended family of High Westers, that's pretty good. So I got a big family. That's fun.
Absolutely. No, that's great. So for some people out there that are, just kind of navigating through, and maybe they're starting their own distillery or kind of jumping into the game, what would be some words of wisdom, because I feel like when people are trying to navigate on their own journey, there's certainly a lot of fears and things like that they have to go through and kind of overcome, right? You have to battle somewhat of your own inner voice telling you no and that you shouldn't do it. What would you tell them?
There were a lot of questions in that question, but that's okay. That's I think, look, everybody needs an anchor, and my anchor was my wife Jane,
mm-hmm.
and through thick and thin, she believed in me. She supported me. I got the hug when I got home, even if the day was shitty or you made a mistake. So everybody needs an anchor.
Okay.
The other thing for me is, the stupidest thing when my dad told me it, I thought, oh my God, Dad, are you kidding me? But I think of it all the time, and it's stupid. Plan your work your plan.
Plan your work.
Doesn't get any simpler than that, right?
Right.
And do it every week. And that's where you course correct. Don't have a plan and stick to it come hell or high water if, the data's saying it ain't going to work. Mm-hmm. But, you need to have a plan. You need to have priorities. So you better sit down once a week and focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'd write down my things every week that I'm going to do. And does it fit with the long-term objectives? If it didn't, why are you doing it? Why are you changing? So, a lot of people are scatterbrained and sporadic and do different things and change course. You can't change course too much, but you need to change course at some point if it's not working. But you also need to hit your priorities it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed. So if you're not stepping back and planning your work, overwhelming amount of stuff coming at you is hard to deal with.
Right. I feel like there's a lot of people every day that especially now in the growth of cell phones and Wi-Fi and being connected, that it's a lot more difficult to try and prioritize.
Life's hard. So, for me, I would prioritize on paper.
Paper. Okay.
So I wouldn't be looking at my computer and you get the ding and the ding and the ding. You got to unplug and focus. And it's really hard now to focus, I think. And, that for me, being meticulous and going offline and thinking and planning, it's hard to do things without that. So
everybody out there, get a pen and paper, write it down.
Well, whatever works for you, but you got to limit the dings.
Right.
They're very distracting. So life's distracting now. It's much more distracting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially with everything else that's going on right now. Well, David, I really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with me. It's been awesome.
Yeah, right on. I appreciate your thoughtful questions. Dang,
yeah,
man, you did some homework, Bobby. That's all I got to say.
Of course. Absolutely.
You're a homework doer. I mean, I'm a homework guy. So it's clear you did your homework too. So good for you.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.
Well, right on. Thank you, Bobby.
Bye.